Wait. Hello and welcome to,
Hey, we like your pod.
and we're going to tell you why. Hi, it's Dawn here, and I'm joined by my trusted partner, Matt Pickett, and our very, very special guest, Tim Backus. Backus,
Woohoo!
not Bacchus, and not Bax, right? Right? Did we get that right? Very perfect. So, Tim, welcome to our podcast. It is so nice to meet you. We can't wait to start talking with you about all the things. But before we do that, how was your week? What's the latest and how's the fam?
Good. As you know, today is my birthday, so that's exciting. It's been a good day. It's a great way to wrap it up. But yeah, otherwise, I'm teaching at school, and it's almost the end of the year, and the kids are very much done. You can tell the end of year, just like not giving a, I don't know if I can swear on this show, has set in. So we're getting there. Summer is almost here. But yeah, it's going well. Matt, what's up with you?
We go for the G rating, so heads up on that. Yeah, Tim, I used to be a public school teacher. I taught band for 13 years, and it was always hard for the band teachers because, most of the classroom teachers by the end of the year kind of are like, okay, we're done. We're watching movies. I don't even care. I'm just going to take a nap in the corner. And the band directors, though, have to have the kids ready for like the end of the year concert. And especially when I was teaching high school, getting the kids ready to play Pomp and Circumstance at the graduation. So like I wasn't allowed to just kind of like, all right, we're done. Like until like the very last minute, till the graduation ceremony, I had to be like on and have the kids moving and taking care of stuff. So, I don't miss that. So, but anyhow, what grade do you teach, Tim?
So I teach sophomore honors English, and I teach a media studies elective. And then next year I'll be switching over. I'll be teaching freshman English, God help me, and I'll be teaching the drama classes. So, yeah.
Well, the freshmen, of course, are like just overgrown 8th graders, I always found. And I work with college freshmen largely, so they're like overgrown 12th graders for the most part. It's a great. My week here, mostly really good. Kids' last day of school was today, so that's very exciting. There was some, rough stuff in the news this week, so that was a real... It was rough, but that aside, like it's been a good week, so I can't complain too much. How about you, Dawn?
Oh, I'm so glad the kiddies are out. I was wondering, we have a Montessori school in our complex here, a private little school, and I was thinking they might have had their last day today. I'm not 100% sure, but I kind of miss it when they're gone on in the summertime. I like them here, but they seemed rather excited last week. And just like a different vibe, I could tell that was toward the end of the school year for them too. So it's really interesting how many of our guests, how many of the Packers content creators, writers, and podcasters and YouTubers are in education. It's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'd say more than half of our guests have been in the field of education in some form or another. Yeah.
That's wild. Yeah, I can think of a few right off the top of my head for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, even Tom Grossi was a high school.
That's right. Yeah.
I was just thinking, the list just goes on and on. So that's really cool. It's interesting. There must be something to that.
It's because teachers are great people, and great people make great content. So that's what it is, obviously.
And great of the Packers, right? So
and great people make great fans. They make great fans in general. And in the one of the things we love about our Packers community is how there are so many people helping us learn and be better fans and be better educated fans too.
Yeah.
So that's all teaching, teaching and learning. So coolio. So me, I've besides that, I've planted some great flowers. I'm trying to keep them alive this year. Since COVID, I've been trying to do urban gardening, and it's harder. I've always had gardens in my home, but it's kind of challenging on my balcony because there's like a lot of a constant breeze, and it's salty air, and it's just different. And so I think this year I finally got the right plants up there, and I do really well with lettuce. I brought some lettuce over to my neighbor yesterday because I've got so much lettuce. I love being able to just go outside and snip my herbs and my lettuce, and it's just so much tastier than even from the farmer's market that I get, lettuce. So yeah, so I'm enjoying that. Cats are great. I'm growing cat grass for them, and they fight over it because they love it so much. But then I let them have too much, and they both actually ended up in the vet this week.
Oh my!
I know. Well, I didn't know, and Tosh especially.
Too hard.
Too much grass. It's always something with these two, but yeah, the kitties are doing great. Tim, I don't know if you know this or not, but I got a kitten basically when we started the podcast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember you mentioned that in the article I wrote about you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. And then I got a cat for my kitten. So that's been interesting. So cool. So Tim, your Twitter reads, for those who don't know who you are, we want them to know everything about you that we can tonight. So your Twitter is, of course, Tim Backus, Backes, at Tim Backus, Backes. And you're a writer guy, and you're really a talented writer. And I'm not just saying that because you wrote about me. But no, we're going to talk about that. I want to know more about how you became such a great writer. But writer guy for Cheesehead TV and Game On Wisconsin, and you're super gifted, and NFL and Packer fans in general are so lucky to have you. And so, where did you learn to write? Is it something you inherited from somebody in your family? And is writing for Cheesehead TV and Game On Wisconsin a hobby, or are you a professional writer? Because you seem like a pro.
Yeah, a little of all of that, actually. I guess now that you mention it, I hadn't really thought of it in the sense of inheritance. But yeah, I mean, my dad is a published author of 6 or 7 books. He was a journalism professor for decades in Milwaukee. He's all, nonfiction. He wrote a biography that won some awards. He's got a bunch of research books that are out there. And he's just been a writer forever. And so growing up, I read constantly, but I also wrote constantly since I was a little kid. I had notebooks that I kept that I would just write in. And sometimes it would be writing stories. Sometimes it would be writing down as many inane facts as I could, about the Packers or about geography or books or whatever, so it wouldn't always necessarily be narrative writing, but I would just be writing something for a couple hours every night, and it helped me fall asleep because I struggled with insomnia even as a young kid really badly. And so, that continued all the way through high school. I continued writing. I joined, kind of embarrassing, but I joined an online wrestling e-federation where you write out all your promos and matches as this character of your creation. So I created my own wrestlers and storylines and stuff. And then, college, I majored in English. So, writing a lot of academic writing, reading a lot. And then for 12 years before I became a teacher, I was doing copywriting professionally. Ad copy, marketing copy, blog copy, articles, press releases, in addition to doing my own writing for fun. So, I mean, it's something that I've been doing since I could physically, write words, a lot. And I've just, for as long as I've lived, I've been a really heavy reader and writer. So, yeah.
One of my best friends in high school had the same last name as you, but pronounced differently. I'm not going to say because it's going to confuse me how to pronounce your name, but suffice to say, she was a huge writer. She actually has a published book as well, and she teaches writing at college somewhere. I can't remember which one, but suffice to say, one of the things I learned from her growing up is that she was such a good writer because she was always writing, and she had this whole collection of her journals going back to when she was a little kid. So I'm imagining Tim's room back when you're in high school, having all these journals everywhere and stuff like that. But yeah, that's amazing. It just reinforces that idea that, the more you work at something, the more time you put into it, the better you're going to get. Because as Donna's saying, as I will second, Tim, you're a very talented writer. We love reading your stuff very much. And I'm not just saying that because you, wrote a thing about Dawn. I'm saying that because I've really enjoyed your writing. And I'll also add, since I'm heaping praise on you, let it be known, people, that Tim is a good take machine. in season. Always really good things you're throwing on Twitter. I know I said that to you before on Twitter, but just want to say it publicly here. But
I feel like
I'm
you're
wondering,
my man on Twitter. I really appreciate that.
yeah, totally. Question for you, Tim. What were the names of the wrestlers that you created? I'm very curious about this.
So there was kind of like a family of them that became like a dynasty. So the initial character was named like David Logan, and he was like this older, like grizzled, kind of beat down. And like the name Logan came from like Wolverine. So he was kind of supposed to be this like badass, like brawler kind of guy. And then I introduced his son as like the second generation, like cocky, like blue blood heir apparent kind of person. And then I brought in like his sister, and like there was like this whole like stable of like this family that sometimes they were good guys, a lot of times they were bad guys, because it was this whole like, you know, I don't know how big of wrestling fans either of you are, if at all, but there's a lot very similar to like the Orton family or the Hart family or whatever. Yeah, so it was a good time. I got real nerdy with it, made them on the video games, you know, so I could wrestle as them and use their moves. And
I love everything about this. This is amazing.
yeah.
And one more question before you take it back to the ones you knew were coming. I just real quickly. So you were working in copywriting, but then you decided to become a teacher. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So what kind of pulled you in that direction?
So in 2018, I received a message from my former high school AP English teacher, and she was like, "Hey, the theater director at our school is going to be stepping down from running the program." They knew that I have done theater like professionally, semi-professionally, community level. I have a lot of hats that I wear. I've been doing that, you know, for years. They knew that I was in the area, you know, at my alma mater or near my alma mater, and were like, "Hey, would you be interested in coming in and doing this and maybe also teaching?" And I was like, "Well, not teaching because that sounds terrible, but I would be interested in doing theater." So I took the theater position, and I've been doing that since 2018. And then when the pandemic hit, I'd been doing copywriting for a while, and I really love the company and I love the people, and I was good at the job, but I never really loved the job because like I always felt this need to do something that I felt was contributing more value to the world. And I don't know, I felt like weird about spending my life like writing ad copy to get people to buy stuff. And when the pandemic hit, and I like kind of lost all of the stuff that I do outside of work, like that makes, you know, work like okay to deal with. I kind of had this like epiphany where I realized like, man, what am I doing? Like I get so much joy out of working with these kids in the theater program. Like, why am I not trying to make this like a thing? And so that kind of started the ball rolling. I ended up enrolling in an online certification program, worked for about a year, taking like classes, taking exams to get my certification through there. Then it just so happened that the school where I am working at now, they had a long-term sub position open up for a woman going on maternity leave in the English department. So I jumped in there, took that on, and then they hired me full-time starting this fall. So yeah, it's been kind of a whirlwind last couple years or so, but I feel really good about it. It's the first time where I feel like completely confident that I'm doing the right thing, you know? So yeah.
As a lifelong educator myself, that just makes my heart sing to hear that story. That is so great. And you have a full gig with them next year, you said, right? You'll be like actually have your class and everything. Congrats.
Yep, English and drama for the whole year. So yeah.
Nice. Very, very cool.
I love that. I love that that story of your rose blooming. Especially, you know, the pandemic, and it made you kind of, you know, assess what you were doing with your life. And that's really quite profound, Tim. And I'm so glad you asked that question, Matt. That's great. We never know. We never know. We're pretty unscripted here. We have a loose script outline that we'd like to, you know, it helps us keep us organized a little bit, but we never know what someone's going to say, and it's always such a delight. Isn't Erin Ellis a copywriter? Isn't that what she does?
Is she?
She does stuff with marketing. Do you know, Tim, actually better what she does? I don't know exactly what she does.
I thought she was a writer.
I don't know exactly what she does either, but yeah, something in marketing or something of that nature.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Marketing for sure, something digital.
Yeah.
Everything's digital now. So
I've tried to write. I'm super creative, and I can relate to you, but only on an art level and not writing. I've written poetry, and it has to kind of come to me. I just wrote a song, and the lyrics and the music. I'm working on more lyrics for it, but they just come. But normally, I have so many thoughts. I just like so many words, and it's so much work for me to kind of keep it together, whereas drawing and painting and all those things are very natural to me. It's like, man, this goes, that
Yeah.
it's
And
not,
that's
yeah,
not
not
for me at all. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so interesting. So
Yeah.
interesting how we all came out.
I'm very musically adept, theatrically, like I write well. Never ever have I been good with drawing or painting or most of the visual arts, but they're so similar in a lot of ways too. I feel like to excel in any of those areas, it requires like a lot of empathy, and like creativity, of course, but like just the ability to like sit and reflect and feel, I think is what makes like great art in any form. So yeah.
That's a good point. And do you perform on stage? Do you like to act then?
Yeah, it's been a bit since I was able to do that regularly because of the kids. But
Sure.
These days it's mostly directing or art admin stuff. I work with a local theater company, also like helping to do admin stuff for them. I direct all this stuff at the school that I work with, and I've directed some stuff professionally. I've only been in 2 shows, I think, since my oldest was born. Before that, I was acting in like 3 or 4 shows a year. So it's been a bit, but I get just as much, if not more, out of directing the kids as I did performing myself. So
Tim, just to nerd out on that for a second with you. So, I was a band director before I started working at University of Cincinnati. And so I've played in and I've conducted a lot of pits. I've even been on stage a little bit more in high school. But the favorite production I was ever a part of was when I got to conduct a pit orchestra for West Side Story. It was amazing. What's the favorite show you've ever been a part of?
I would say there are 2 that immediately jump out. Acting wise, my favorite would be The Last 5 Years, 2-person show, sung through musical. For those of you who are unfamiliar, who might be listening to this, basically the idea is that it charts the story of this 5-year relationship from both characters' perspectives, from the time they have their first date all the way through marriage, and then when they eventually like split. And for the male character, Jamie, it begins at the beginning of the relationship and goes, to the end. And for the female character, Kathy, it starts at the end of their relationship and goes to the beginning and goes reverse in time. And the only time that they're on stage together is meeting in the middle when they get married. And so like, it's really like, the music is fantastic. It's really profound, kind of depressing, but also like a really honest assessment of like a relationship that evolves like that, which is really excellent. Jason Robert Brown, great composer. And then directing wise, the first professional show I directed was Next to Normal here in Milwaukee. Also kind of depressing, a rock show, 6-person, about a woman who suffers from bipolar disorder and the effect that it has on her and her family. And just like the huge response that we got to it in Milwaukee, like from the Milwaukee theatrical community, and like, bigwigs, even like people from the Rep and Skylight and other big theaters coming out to see it. It was just like incredible. I don't know that I'll ever have an experience quite like that again to that scale. But yeah, I mean, both are incredible shows, emotional, just like the experience of being involved with them, I think is, yeah, I don't know that those can be beat.
Nice. I'm not familiar with either of them, but now I want to be. I'll have to check those out.
Yeah.
Yeah, if nothing else, reading the script. Sometimes you can find community theater on YouTube and things. I love community theater. I love all theater. I probably don't talk about this very much, but I was also involved in community theater.
Yeah.
That was more of my hobby. I was a costume designer and for many, many years, and I ended up on the board of directors for a community theater. And so I've got decades of that, and still friends with lots of the actors and the directors and all that. But I think if with theater, almost if anyone, I say this about travel, if you can travel, right? But if you can get involved in theater, there's so many needs, like for people who you don't have to have training. I could never be on stage. I'm a behind the scenes person. I did do set design on one show, which I loved, but mostly it was costumes. But there's so many things that, that you could do in a theater just for fun, just once, just get an experience in theater just once with one production. Especially if you're living in a bigger, city where there's lots of different community theaters. We have like the La Jolla Playhouse out here, which is professional, but they'll take volunteers. They'll give you like little tickets and other things to pay their volunteers, and they're really good about that. But like for a dresser or a runner or, just all kinds of stuff, you don't have to have any real experience. And theater is so cool as far as learning how to work as a team and build a community, and before what goes on the stage, and then to just sit there, just to sit there and say, wow, I was part of that. At any level is so fun. It's so fun. Cool.
What I love about working with the high school kids is like seeing them realize that and embrace it, and just like the energy is so cool. Like, I don't know. That's my favorite thing, is like seeing them like struggle and then finally like get it. And then just like the explosion of emotion, like after the opening night, is just every single time. It's so cool to watch.
Very cool. Both you and Matt have theater voices. You have I don't have a theater voice at all. You have like my voice. I talk to people. I could be talking like right to your face. I have a microphone here and everything, but if we're in person, you wouldn't even hear me. My voice doesn't carry at all. I'm like screaming right now just to get it out.
Teacher voice.
You have
teacher voice, what it is.
Full voices, good theater voices. So yeah. Oh, that's so cool. It's so cool. Maybe one day you'll be in a production together. That'd be so cool. You never know, after you retire and things like that. So you may know this, Tim. We love when we have a guest on our show, and when we first came out with our podcast, we did this. We shared our own origin stories, but we love to hear origin stories, and of course, all about how fun those are, because that's what you write about for Cheesehead, or you have a series as one of the things you write about. Origin stories are so cool. So you mentioned that you live in Milwaukee. So were you born and raised in Wisconsin? And how did you become a Packer fan, or was it kind of just something that you wasn't inherited?
Yeah, I was just kind of born into it, like a lot of us here in Wisconsin. I was born and raised here in the same town that I live in now as an adult, actually. I grew up here. I went away for a while, life brought me back this direction. But yeah, I've lived in Wisconsin my whole life. Growing up, I mean, as early as I can remember, the Packers were on the TV, and my parents aren't like, I wouldn't call them like diehards or like obsessive fans. Like, they don't miss a game, right? They turn it on, but they don't pay attention to the news related to the Packers or to the NFL. Like, it's just a thing that is on, and they watch it, and they can probably tell you most of the players, but it's not like, it is for me, which is an obsession. I couldn't really tell you how I ended up becoming so obsessed with it in that sense. I guess the early exposure like helped with that, but for whatever reason, I think it was partially the fact that, again, I was just like, to help myself get to sleep at night, I was just constantly writing stuff down, right? And it turned to like memorizing facts and lists. And football was a great way to, facilitate that. So I would be writing down like, all right, try to remember every single player on the 1996 Packers roster, right? Like write them all down. Or like I'm sitting there at like 8 or 9 years old and name every single quarterback, running back, wide receiver one for every team in the NFL. Like write them all down. Like that's the kind of stuff that I was just doing. And so I'm guessing my parents must have noticed this, because I ended up amassing like a pretty decent sized like football card collection. And I would memorize everything on those. They would give me these like little like pamphlets that came with like pizza boxes or beer 30 packs that had like NFL schedules and information in it. Eventually they got me a subscription to Sports Illustrated for Kids, and that always had cool stuff with like the cards that came with it. So yeah, it just sort of like built up over time. And by the 95 and for sure the 96 season, like I was only in 3rd or 4th grade, but I was like pretty intensely watching these games. And I actually remember that 96 season, like the game they played against the 49ers on a Monday night, screaming and crying because my parents wouldn't let me stay up past halftime because it was Monday Night Football. And of course it ended up being like an epic game where they go and Chris takes the 53-yard field goal to win it. And I remember the NFC Championship game that year. I think it was the very first time I ever swore in front of my parents. I'm like 8 years old. The Panthers scored first, like, oh no, the world is ending. And like I said a swear, and my mom was like, you can't watch the rest of the game now. And then I like lost my mind. I was like sobbing, but then they let me like go back and watch it. But yeah. So, but like, I don't know. Those are just like my earliest memories, and it just kept building. And like for my whole childhood, like I knew a lot of kids who really cared about the Packers a lot, but I just something about my obsessive nature, I guess, like made me just like sink into it more than most kids that I knew, so yeah. And that's kind of continued into adulthood, although now I'm on Twitter and I see all these people who know way more than I do and are like even bigger nerds about it than me. So it's like, yeah. So it's been a humbling experience, but I've also learned a lot, from following other folks like that.
And in finding those people on Twitter, you found your people, and that's a beautiful thing, Yeah. The way you describe your parents just kind of like watching the games and not being like super like into it is it really resonated with me, because that's what my dad is. Like we'll be texting during the game and stuff like that, but during the week he's not keyed into it at all, But then like the game comes, he's always going to watch them. He'll never miss a game. So very, very similar experience that way. Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I would be reading like the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel during the week, like all of the Bob McGinn, Tom Silverstein articles, like get every morning before I'd go to school, like have the sports section out. I don't think my dad ever, same as you. I don't think he ever read anything. Like just be like, all right, Sunday, time to turn on the game. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad was pretty into it, and then I don't know what my mother was a mom, so she was busy, but she was paying attention to the game. But when they got retired and all that, they were both pretty into it. He read a lot. My father read a lot. That's another thing. I'm just back to the writing thing. I'm an avid reader, but I can't write. So I don't know if that always translates to me. I mean, I can write, but nobody would want to read. Anyway, but yeah, my dad. So I think my sister pays a lot of attention. My one sister, probably my brother too, listens to sports radio in Wisconsin and keeps up on it. So I'm guessing my whole family's about the same. But yeah, you found your people, and you're not the only one who's obsessed. And I love that. I love that. And I was thinking your story sounded a little bit like Andy Herman, right? He was like 8 or 9 years old, and people were he knew everything.
Andy Herman makes me look like an idiot, though.
Oh
So.
no. Well, I don't think he makes you look like an idiot, but
Well, when it comes to the Packers,
definitely,
but, yeah.
he's definitely knows a lot. He's like the way he just can rattle things off.
He's one of the people that really like got me interested in writing about the Packers. Honestly, like
that's cool.
It was just randomly one day. I mean, this is 4.5, 5 years ago now. Like I remember Jersey Al. I followed him on Twitter. He posted something about Cheesehead TV looking for writers. I was like, I could probably do that. So I like sent him a sample, and he's like, sure, you've got the gig. So great. But I had been following like Andy, Aaron Nagler. Obviously, I've been following Cheesehead TV since I was in college. I liked to read a lot of Zach Jacobson stuff at the time. Ross Uglum, people like that. And it was just like pretty wild to like start seeing my stuff published on the same website as them, and like I hadn't really had much interaction with any of these people at all. And suddenly it's like, no, we're kind of colleagues, I guess, like it was weird.
Absolutely colleagues. No, I think it's definitely safe to say. I mean, definitely when you're talking about that, Tim, I sense a little bit of maybe like residual imposter syndrome, but I want to tell you, man, you're no imposter. Not at all.
Thanks. I have found my lane. I feel like, I am not a tape analyst guy. I'm not like an amateur scout. I'm not that person. But I feel like I deliver like my thoughts, at least in writing, very like articulately and thoughtfully, and I like can create a narrative pretty well. And so like, I mean, this stuff, obviously this summer, it's a little fluffier. It's fun. And like people like the stuff. And then during the season, the stuff I like to write tends to just be more like analysis and reflection, and commentary on what the team is doing, rather than like analysis of like every single move they're making or stuff like that. I tend to go at things from a bit of a farther back, like higher level, rather than getting down into the nitty gritty. And I think that's generally where I'll end up just sticking as long as I do this.
And that's such a huge thing, to find your role, to find what piece of the machine you are, and to be able to just like sparkle in that role is such a beautiful thing. I definitely think the people who, what I'm trying to say is, it's a thing that I think of that Dusty said one time when I was asking him a question that had nothing to do with like what he kind of focuses on. He's like, look, I'm not the guy who can answer that. Like that's not, well, like his lane. It's not my lane. I think it's actually what he said. Like he does this stuff. And it's like, that's right. And you do this stuff extremely well, Dusty.
Yeah.
Finding that thing. What's that, Tim?
I just said he's incredible.
Oh, one of the best. Yeah. No, that's beautiful.
Yeah, and now that you mention it, I think that's one of the reasons your writing really resonates with me, because I don't grasp or retain details. I'm more of a big picture kind of person, the way I do things. And it's like and I personally will I have an idea, and even if people want to know what I'm doing or if they want any details, it's like, I don't know. It'll just work out. Just watch and see what comes out on the other end, type of thing. So I think that's why your writing is so interesting. And also you can be a little bit more creative, artistic in that way, right? If you're not just doing straight details. Yeah. I think so. That's cool. Yeah. So hey Willip. Hey, We Like Your Pod is all about relationships and community. We've sort of come to be that, I think. We found our lane, maybe.
I think
and so we love it, Tim. If you would share how your people, your wife, your family, and your friends help to support you in what you do, specifically with the Packers community, or maybe any of your other hobbies. But yeah, because we all know that what we do takes time away from something or somebody. And so we need support in order to be able to do some of those things.
Yeah, kind of funny regarding Packer stuff specifically. I don't know how many people actually like that I know personally like realize that I like write all this stuff and it gets published, and like sometimes I'm on like podcasts and stuff like this, and people know that I'm into the Packers, you know, but I'm not really on social media other than Twitter. Like Instagram a little bit. I ditched Facebook kind of a couple years ago. So I don't like share my stuff super broadly among like people I'm like personally connected with. So, you know, some people know, but I haven't really made a huge deal of it. But in general, like I have my my hands in a lot of pots. Is that the right?
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah. And it's, you know, I mean, family wise, like, yeah, my wife is incredibly supportive and always is encouraging me to like, you know, find the stuff I care about and do it. And I think sometimes maybe she lets me do a little too much, and I have to like, you know, realize for myself, like I'm overextending myself and pull it back in. The Packers stuff, like I'm not somebody who's grinding tape all the time, you know, so I get to spend some time, like just quiet time, like, you know, writing stuff out for myself. And it's more, I wouldn't say it's a source of stress at all. It's more like something that I can just like sit and like decompress and do, you know, which is really great about it. But I mean, yeah, I've got stuff that eats up my time with theater stuff, with school now, you know, having this job that like is definitely not a 9 to 5, like, you know, Matt, it takes you like out when you're outside of work too. And then, you know, I'm involved with like, you know, other local organizations, and yeah, I mean, having that support here at home, like letting me like do these things that I care about, it's been big for me. And it also like kind of gave me the courage to like jump into a career again that I feel like is like contributing something, because it's like, hey, I'm like, you know, I'm really like filling my cup in all these other ways, like, you know, here's a bigger way where I can do it. So that was kind of rambling and unorganized, but but that's my response to that.
It's good.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true that doing those extra things, like being involved with theater, you know, just it's weird hours and stuff like that. So having that kind of support is such a big deal. I mean, the fact that you said that your wife like doesn't necessarily stop you from doing too much is like that's good that you have the capacity to do as much as you feel like you need to. It sounds like.
Yeah, and I definitely don't take that for granted.
Yeah,
and it's funny because like my Twitter presence is like 90 to 95% Packers related, right? But like the Packers stuff that I do is like a very, very small percentage of my life. So it's just like, you know, it's kind of funny that exists just as like one little bucket of who I am, and the people that I'm connected with there like don't necessarily know all the other stuff I've got going on, but the people that I know personally in my life don't necessarily know about all the Packers stuff that I'm doing. And like yeah, I told somebody, like I was interviewing AJ Dillon one night on the Cheesehead TV show, and they're like, "What? How did that happen?" So it's just, yeah, it's funny.
The many lives of Tim Backus. Very cool.
I don't think I could have done all the things I did if I had a family, and if, you know, because I could do whatever I wanted whenever I want, you know, as a single person. I think that's why I asked that question, because I do know that a lot of like it's not just the Packers stuff, but a lot of people have many dimensions to them, and they have many hobbies or different interests, and it all takes time. And I'm always just curious about that. And I feel like it's a good way for us to get to know you a little bit better too. So,
yeah.
So you said you're on the Twitter, and I have just one quick more question, if you don't mind, before we get to our signature superlatives for the week. We like to ask about our beloved NFL and Twitter community, and what you love the most, and one thing you would change if you could. And maybe there's nothing that you would change.
Oh man, I forgot to think about this one in advance.
Love everything and you change nothing. Next question.
Yeah.
I mean, I really love like how, and this is kind of unique, I mean, to me, and like, you know, not necessarily the whole Twitter community at large, but like the fact that I just like randomly responded to a post from Jersey Al 4.5 years ago, and now I'm like sitting here talking to you guys about stuff, or like I was like talking to AJ Dillon the one night, or talking to Kenny Clark one time, or you know, whoever, like all these like crazy situations that I've ended up in. Like I have a pretty meager following, but like there are people who I have no idea who they are, who like follow me and care about things that I say, kind of, which is really weird. But it's just like, you know, the fact that there are so many people who are able to like communicate with you and interact with you about this niche interest that you have, and like everybody feels so passionately about it, is really cool. Now, you know, that can also be the thing that is kind of annoying, because I don't, you know, not everybody necessarily sees, how do I want to phrase this in a polite way? Not everybody necessarily has the most like positive outlook on things, and the sheer negativity, like that's just, I just don't get it. You know, there's so much like bad stuff in the world that I just can't imagine like letting stuff related to like football or the Packers just like getting me so worked up and angry. You know, like it should be like a release and an escape, and I don't understand how some people are just so easily like get into that like extreme negative, like kind of hateful almost like mindset, and just like tear people down for like daring to be positive sometimes, you know, or enjoy things. And that can get really pervasive on Twitter. And it's not necessarily people coming at me like that, but I mean, like a lot of the people that I like and follow, like you go into their replies with certain things and it's just so much hate. And it's like, why, man? I don't understand. So that, I mean, that's the downside of like getting invested in a niche like fandom where people all care so much, is there's going to be people who care like so much that it just, they become like too obsessive, and like, I don't know. Yeah. That is the thing that can turn me off sometimes and just cause me to log out for a bit, you know?
Yeah, same here for sure. I mean, on both counts, just it's so cool to meet these people just from not just over the country, but across the whole entire planet, even, you know, who have this shared love of the Packers. And I mean, in my day-to-day life, there are not a lot of people I interact with who give the first anything about the Packers, you know, so to be able to like, you know, go into my phone and have this amazing connection to all these people, it's a really wonderful thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're totally right. I try to avoid comment sections for the most part for most people. Like anything, say, good example would be Andy Herman. Anything he writes, a bunch of knuckleheads will jump in and say stupid stuff. It's like, what? Why are you doing this? Like, it is very strange. Totally.
Yeah, and it's hard when we care about somebody, or we just like them and we know that they're a good person, just putting this content out. I mean, this is Andy's full-time job, you know, and it's hard for me personally because I'm a very protective person. I'm very nurturing, mothery kind of like overload kind of. So I have to just not even get on Twitter, but sometimes I'll find myself like defending people like, well, you know, what do you mean? And yeah, it's just not worth it. It's just not worth it, which is a good segue, I think, to this week's superlatives, because there has been quite a week in this country, at least. And I personally have a difficult time because I'm very empathetic and sensitive when we have tragedy to deal with, you know, at such a large level, to even think about football or anything small. It's just like, I just have to go for a walk. I just have to get away and keep my perspective about things. So, and so for that reason, I didn't bring any superlatives this week, but I would love, Tim, for you to start us out with your signature superlatives for the week, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So I have 4. And the first one going along with what you were just talking about, Steve Kerr, NBA legend, coach of the Golden State Warriors. I'm sure you guys have seen or at least heard about the rant that he went on the other day about the shootings in Texas at the school and his thoughts on gun violence in general. And I just, I don't want to get too political on your show, but he everybody should watch and just see like the raw passion and emotion and just weariness that he projected in that moment. And I didn't know until reading about this afterwards that his father was a victim, like it was killed with gun violence. And so he has a very personal connection to this. I know it's not the first time Steve Kerr has spoken out about this issue before, but it's just, man, I'm also an empath like you, Dawn, and I just like, especially so since becoming a father, and just like all week, like as the pictures of these kids who were killed have been floating around Twitter, like I just like I see my kids' faces in their faces, and it's just I can't process it, and it's horrendous that this just continues to be our reality, and I just feel so powerless about it. And Steve Kerr, the way that he spoke about it in that moment was so raw, but so controlled and like focused and on message, and it was just really inspiring. And you hope that people like him who have like a really strong and powerful voice like that, like hopefully maybe people will take something from that. But so that's my first one. Getting more fun and positive after that. I wanted to give a shout out to Tyler Herrick, who does the social media for Cheesehead TV. Really funny guy, like extremely funny. I don't know how he comes up with all of this stuff, not just for the Cheesehead TV brand, but for his own account. I just really appreciate him a lot because he's somebody who I've interacted with a little more often than some of the other folks that I'm connected with on the Packers Twitter. I've met him in person a couple times. We've had some beers together. Just a really good dude, hilarious person to follow. And he and I like have a very similar outset, I feel like, when it comes to like, keeping the good vibes as much as possible. Not necessarily being like, afraid to be critical when necessary, but still like, we're here for the fun of it. And I feel like he really gets it from that perspective. So love Tyler. Got to give him a shout out. Let's see. I have my friend Greg Meinholz, who I actually featured in Cheesehead Origins like 3 or 4 weeks ago now, I think. So Greg just started writing for Packers Talk, and he is actually a friend of mine from high school. Was a year ahead of me. We knew each other in band. He played the trumpet, I played the saxophone. And he, like me, like we had very similar approaches to the fandom. Like he also was just like crazy obsessed with like the stats and the numbers and memorization and everything. And I kind of got reconnected with him after years of, not really seeing him through Twitter. We talked through there, and he, like me, saw a post from Jersey Al that was like, "Hey, we're looking for writers." And he was like, "Yeah, sounds like fun." So he's just getting started. He got brought into Packers Talk. He's doing like some fun stuff. I've read a few of his articles, and it's good stuff. And I know he's like just like super stoked to be involved, and like he's starting to interact with more people too. And it's just like, I don't know. I kind of see like myself like 4 years ago in what he's doing now, which is kind of cool. So follow him on Twitter. I don't have his Twitter name memorized. It's G Meinholz something. I don't know. I'm sure you guys can do something with that. And then finally, I am one of 7 people who still watches Survivor, and I the last night was the season finale for season 42 I've seen all 42, most of them multiple times because I'm a huge nerd. And I have to give a shout out to the winner, and I hope I'm not spoiling this for anybody, but you should have. Yeah, sorry. Maryanne Oketch, the winner of Survivor 42. Just the second Black woman in Survivor history to win Survivor, the first since season 4, like 20 years ago. And 23 years old, one of the youngest winners ever. She was like underestimated throughout the whole process, like kind of came on strong at the end and just like really like blew people away in her answers to the jury at the end. I don't know if either of you know anything about Survivor or how it works, but I just wanted to give a shout out to her because A, I love Survivor. B, representing like kind of an underrepresented population on Survivor. And just like she's just like a super like bright, high energy, positive person. And I thought that would be kind of fun to recognize. So those are my 4.
Those are great.
Love it.
So Tyler is definitely an essential follow in the Packers community for sure, and the work he does for the socials for Cheesehead is it's amazing. He's very good at that. And I've interacted with Greg a bit on Twitter, and I would definitely second what you're saying. I mean, he's super smart and just a really nice guy to interact with. So definitely just want to second that. So we lost Dawn for a second. I'm afraid maybe one of her cats finally ate her. I think it was going to happen one of these days. So I'm sure she would want me to go ahead and jump into my superlatives for the week. So I'll just go ahead and do that. So here's what I got for this week, Tim. All right. I had 2 ready. And so my first one that I have is going to be, basically funny. I was trying to see how I had phrased this already when I wrote it down. Shoot, I can't find it. Suffice to say, it's really kind of best relief because so Tuesday was a rough day, of course, right? And Tuesday is when my favorite podcast comes out, On Brand and Off Topic. And I heard the news later in the day after I had listened to the podcast, which I usually do at lunchtime. And, we were all feeling a lot of rough feelings, and that happened. I think many of us still are, myself included for sure. And so that night when I was washing dishes, I just needed something to kind of get my mind off of it. So I went back and re-listened to the end of that episode. And they did this segment. They end every show with since we're PG or since we're G-rated, I can't say the actual name, random stuff segment, let's say. The random stuff. And so the random stuff segment this week was about different hockey teams, which one you'd rather be stuck on a desert island with. So it'd be like not the team itself, but whatever the mascot is, basically. So just the way they went through it and talked about like this versus this for each of the team groupings, it was amazing. You couldn't have scripted it better. And of course it wasn't scripted, but the way how it went from like just funny to funnier to funnier until like it got up to the point where they're talking about it was the Predators versus someone, but it was the Predators. What was the thing that made it funny? I wouldn't want to ruin it for people who haven't heard it yet. If you haven't listened to On Brand and Off Topic, I will say, as I've said before on the show, it gets kind of raunchy. So be aware of that if you want to dip your foot into that one. But worth it because it's a very, very fun show. But it was welcome relief to go back and listen to that segment, especially again. It for a minute, helped me to just kind of like breathe and laugh and just kind of like recenter. So huge shout out to those guys for that segment, especially, and just for the work they do every week. My second and final for this week is best series. So Monte Moore, which is he's Ferd_Turgeson on Twitter. Monte Moore has been doing a sort of series of best ofs or like rankings, really. So like top 15, top 10, whatever the topic happens to be. Some of the more recent ones were like top 15 TV dads. We have like birds, sports movies, emojis, salad dressings, fashion hat types, sitcoms, days of the week, numbers, Roman numerals, planets, types of chip. Well, anyhow, this is just more recent ones. He's been doing this for a little while, but the ones this week just have been getting just extra ridiculous and a lot of fun. And I love that he does these and people are commenting on with their reactions like, oh, you forgot this thing, or like, how can you possibly rank this thing above this thing? And it's never really like mean. It's just like people kind of having like a fun sort of debate about it. And just one of those like great instances of community and people interacting and having a good time and just taking a minute to just interact with each other. And so I've really enjoyed those a lot. I've definitely commented on a lot of them, and highly recommend it. And that's another great guy to follow. If you don't already follow Monte Moore, again, Ferd Turgeson on Twitter, he's one of my favorite follows for sure. And he's also on Last Call Lambo, which is another great podcast to check out if you haven't done so, folks. So those are my for the week.
I've been following Monte like since he was just like some random troll, just like responding to people's comments. Like I feel like, who the hell is this guy? He's hilarious, but like so it's been kind of funny to see his evolution from just like responding to people who say stupid things to like actual like really like incredible content creator in his own right, and like super cool dude also. So yeah. Totally a second for me.
Was really good too. Sorry to interrupt with you. Yeah, like the exposure he's getting through Cheesehead TV with the things he's doing for that have been really cool too.
Yeah, totally.
I like it. Very, very good choices, gentlemen. All of them. And I never watched Survivor, but my parents did, and I have friends who do. And so when I go visit, Survivor would be on. So I kind of know the show. I can see why. I think it's interesting, but that's a really cool catch, Tim, about Maryanne Oketch. And all of these links will be in our description below. So if you didn't catch it, don't worry about having to write it down. Just go into the show description below, wherever you're watching or listening. We'll have all those links for you. So yeah, as I said, I am deferring my superlatives this week. I just spent my week gardening and walking and getting fresh air and just keeping my balance the way that we all have to preserve ourselves certain ways. So yeah, so Maddie, Tim first, of course. Any final thoughts before we sign off? And then Maddie?
No, I just want to say thanks for having me. This was great. And go Pack.
Go
Pack, go, as always. Yeah, Tim, I'm really glad that you're able to join us. Having been a big fan of yours on Twitter now for quite a while, to finally get a chance to talk to you has been just absolutely delightful. So I really appreciate it, man. I would say if I had any final thoughts, Don, it would just be like you just said, we have to make sure we're taking care of ourselves, through rough weeks like this. It's hard to get through it, but finding ways to take care of your health, take care of your mental health, take care of physical health, just make sure to do those things. Oof. But that said, so friends, make sure you're following Tim on Twitter. That is at Tim Backus, TimBackes. And of course, you'll find links in our show description to everything we mentioned. So please check it out. And folks, when you subscribe to our podcast, you help us spread the love in our community. And by sharing our podcast with your friends and family, you help the community and those who need positive influences and a little football fun in their lives.
That's right, Maddie. Thank you. And Maddie and I both love you. Tim, we love you. Those who are listening and watching, we're all three of us so glad to know you, to be fans of you, and to have the luxury of being fans of the most storied team in the NFL. We appreciate your support, your subscriptions, and sharing our pod. And we look forward to seeing you next week on
Hey, we like your pod. All right.
Football in general comes down to discipline and people owning their roles. And when you aren't disciplined or you go outside the scheme, bad stuff happens. Down to discipline and people owning their roles.